You're listening to the Culture Junkie podcast, where we go beyond the surface of pop culture.
I'm Keith.
And I'm Xandra. Together, we dive into the craft process and passion that drive today's creators. This is the Culture Junkie podcast.
Hey, everybody. Today, we are lucky enough to have my old friend, Tom Barlow, here with us in the studio today. Barlow's career highlights include his breakout hit Walk Away, multiple Juno Award nominations, international performances, so many career milestones. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for coming on with us today.
I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, good. Glad you're looking forward to it. So what are you doing? What's today? What happened to you today?
Well, I'm a late riser. I go to bed late. I get up late. So just getting the day sorted. I like to work on some art. And then very sadly, spend way too much time trying to get my art out in the world because it involves all kinds of things I don't understand, that I'm not inclined to want to understand.
What are the ways that you must put your art into the world?
I used to a lot about record companies because in the large part, they were quite terrible for a bunch of reasons, but they did do stuff that I didn't want to do. They had a sales department that did sales things.
Right.
And so even though I know I was always the head of sales as the artist, it was nice to have a sales partner. And now I don't have a sales partner. I'm head of sales and I don't want to be head of sales, but I'm head of sales. And that's
You want to make music.
I want to make music. And I know that sounds super, arty, but at some point you have to say to yourself, what is my priority? Is it making of the art or is it the selling of the art? And if one of those things has to suffer, I would rather the selling of the art suffer, or it's going to take over all of my time. And I might become a really good salesperson and a lesser artist. If I'm 20 years old and I just want to make $1, then I'm going to have to be good at content creation, which is just a phrase that hurts my soul.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're the sales lead, you're the marketing lead. I bet you do your own accounting. You got to do all of the bookkeeping too, right? I mean, this is what it's like to be in the music industry in 2025. That's changed a lot since when you got started, eh?
Has it ever? And not all for the bad. So I can write a song today. It could have international release tomorrow. That is not something that you could do 30 years ago, 40 years ago when I started in the music business. There are no gatekeepers. But the gate is so wide that every single human with an internet connection can put music into the world. There's a lot of noise and there's some beauty in the noise, but there's a lot of noise in the noise. Noise in the Noise sounds like a great alt punk band, by the way.
All right. So I think we've known each other for about 45 years. And in all this time, I always tell people that, my friend Tom Barlow is a working musician. And as for most of that time, you've been someone who has music at the core of your day-to-day existence, So what's that journey been like?
Well, journey is a good term for it because there's times of pure elation and joy of saying, I think I've made a great piece of art. It's so exciting. There's very few buzzes like it in my experience. And there's times where you just think the well has run dry. Will I ever make a piece of art again? Am I good? Is anyone going to like this? Should I care if anyone's going to like this? Like the games you can fall into when you start, doing the deep dive into your creative, emotional states. The best therapy I find is just to stop thinking and start making art. Just the making of it. That seems
I like that.
It just seems to get me through. I forget who it was, some great writer, Hemingway or something, said, write poems until you write a great poem. And when you write a great poem and you love it, rip it up and throw it away and never look at it again. Because it's not the thing, it's the making of the thing that is where you will get your nourishment. So I'm trying to focus on the making of the thing and less on what happens to that thing after I make it. But then again, like I said, I'm not 20 or 25 or 30 and trying to not have to work, 2 jobs so I can make art. In that world, you have to care about your followers and your Spotify playlists and all of that stuff. Not only do you have to care about it, in many ways, it has to be the center.
Mm-hmm.
Or How do you make a living? How do you make a dollar? How do you move out of your parents' house?
Yeah. So you find that liberating that you don't have to do that? I mean, like you said, it's been a long time since you've been in the business, and that process has obviously been incremental from going from how it was in the old days to how it is now, as has your life, right? I mean, you've changed, had to have changed with the times in order to stay relevant, So is it better now or
It it's there are things that are better for sure.
okay?
There's something fun about being in the chase. There's an element that fires you up, that you're like, I gotta go and write a hit. I gotta go on tour. I gotta make this happen. I gotta grind. I'm gonna grind and grind until something happens. There's something exciting about that. My fear for young artists is you can do all that and make $5,000 a year. 1 million plays on Spotify, a million, $5,000. Like if you have a manager, if you have a co-writer, if you have any other hand in that pie, and there usually are many hands in that pie, even with 1 million plays on your new song, you cannot even come close to making a living. It's a terrible time financially to be an artist. And unfortunately, finances matter, because if you are so worried about having to get kicked out of your house because you can't pay the rent, that's not a good headspace for making art. A lot of people think it is, that artists are in this, emotional turmoil, and that's where their great art comes from. I don't think so.
Yeah.
All that does is create anxiety and stress and mental block. And so, we as a society, if we want to nurture our artists, we have to find a way for them to be able to somehow at least make minimum wage.
Hmm. I think you're right too, because when you're trying to survive, it eats into your creativity and your playfulness and your ability to connect with other people. So I think you're completely right around that.
To loop back to your question, yeah, I feel blessed that I obviously am not never got rich on music, far from it, but I don't live in a perpetual state of financial anxiety. And that is a beautiful thing. I was talking with Bill Bell, who produced my last record a couple of days ago, and he's like, well, what are we doing really when we're making art now? And he said, you got that friend who builds train sets in his basement. He just goes down there and he makes a little bridge, and he carves the little man that stands beside the bridge, and he makes the little trees and he puts them
Yeah.
around, and nobody is going to pay money to come in his basement and see his little train set. He does that for his joy. And
That's right.
occasionally, if he's lucky, someone will go, I love your little train set. And he'll go, wow, that's so great. But really, that's irrelevant. He
Yeah.
has a train set in the basement, and that's where he goes and does his thing. And I feel that my art now, yes, I put it out. Yes, I want people to love it. And yes, occasionally something magical happens with a piece of art I make. But I like to think of myself as the guy building his train set in the basement.
Well, so it's now that you're in the basement building your train set, who are your influences to inspire you to start building your train set all those years ago? Growing up, who did you like?
It's funny. A bunch of my high school friends, as you guys know, I turned 60 a couple of weeks ago. And a bunch of my high school friends came to the birthday party / single release for the new single. And it brought back memories of being 15, skipping school in a friend's basement. All the albums are there. And I immediately go for the Neil Young, Stones, classic rock, protest singer Bob Dylan pile of records. And I hear someone yell, Barlow's going to the dead pile. So for my
Wow.
friends who were 15 at that age, living in Willowdale, that
As we
represented
did.
the dead pile, the why are you going there? And I was steered in that moment to the Clash, the Joe Jackson, the early 80s, punk new wave pile of albums. And really, I think it was in that moment, partly out of fear of not being cool. I was like, oh, I don't want to be the dead pile guy. And partly just feeling this energy, this new energy. And I would say that moment was a key moment of me understanding that it's worth looking for new stuff. Always. Now more than ever, it's worth looking for new stuff.
Are you still focusing on that style, or have you evolved away from it a bit? What do you think? I know you still have the energy, but I think the style's a little different. You tell me how you see it.
You know, when I was signed to major labels, there was this phrase they always used to use. Barlow, we need a cohesive package. And one of the problems they had with me was if a song came out as a ska song, it's a ska song. And if a song came out as a folk song, it's a folk song. And if it came out as a rock song or whatever, however the hell it came out, that's what I wanted to do. And they were always trying to take the edges in because you can't market, or it's difficult to market 6 different musical styles. But for me, the musical style was me. It's my voice. It's how I'm seeing the world. You couldn't do that with radio. You're like, well, what kind of radio does this go on? We can't have 8 different radio formats in one album. So now I don't have to care about that stuff because no one's going to play me on the radio anyway. So I might put out a song like I just did with a reggae influence. The next song.
Great song, by the way. Love that one.
Thank you. The next song we have coming out is just a straight up rock banger. And I don't care. And nobody has to care. Like, do we even care anymore? Thank God David Bowie didn't care.
Yeah.
Or he would have gone his whole career, you know, with the Starman stuff in tights.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been great. But anyway, so I guess one of the reasons they would probably want to put you in this box, we want to go back to Walk Away. That was in 2003, I believe, because I turned 40. And right, that was, I think that is that fair to say that was your breakout hit? It was very interesting thing because when I got signed to my first full major label deal, I was 35, 36, something like that. So I was like a grown man and had not made it yet and really was sort of desperate for some kind of measurable success. And so that song became a massive radio hit. That song led to Juno Award nominations and big tours and all of that stuff. So I owe a lot to that song and to Mladin, who I co-wrote the song with. But what's really interesting about that is it did not really create a fan base. Mm-hmm. And in those days, there was a lot of bands that had what the industry called turntable hits. And there were a ton of them. So people are like, oh, I hear that song on the radio. I find now I can put out a song that generates fans. Why that song was a song that was a massive radio hit and did generate fans. But a song like Clarice, which was not on a major label, which did not have nearly that amount, creates fans. I don't know. It's a mystery to me. Well, you know what? It's funny you say that, Tom, because I think the reason Walked Away was such a big hit was because of the hook. Doesn't matter if you're lying in the gutter. Doesn't matter if your brain's all clubbed. That grabbed me. First time I heard that, I thought, ooh, that was cool, you know? And I think that resonated with a lot of people. And other songs like Clarice is a great song. But like you said, I find that more of a sing-along mood kind of thing, you know, that everyone feels involved in that. But Walked Away, you're listening to the song, you're listening to your message, and then you get that, doesn't matter if you're lying in the gutter. That sounds, to me, that's the hook. That's the grab.
Well, you know, I will confess right here that I ripped it off from Oscar Wilde, who said, I may be lying in the gutter, but at least I'm staring at the stars.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that is an inspirational line.
So I just thought I would do a little thievery. I was quite convinced his lawyers would not get it, and I would be off the hook.
But you know what? Anyway, for me, it's great. And also the breakdown with that, like I said, we're of the same vintage and we grew up listening to the same kinds of stuff and the way songs were built. You know, if that song, like that Kim Mitchell song, no, it's Max Webster, Let Go of the Line.
Yeah.
You know, it's got a intro, it's got a build up, it's built like it's almost like classical music. You know, there's all these sections to that song and it's not just verse, chorus, hook and out, you know? And I find when Walked Away was like that to me, it just had a great build, a great foundation for music. Anyway, so how did that song come together?
It came together with me reading about the strangest ways. You know, if I knew how my best songs came together, I would do that thing all the time. And the answer is I don't know. But I remember reading a stat in some sociology something or other, and it just said it was a question to young men like 17 to 21. Would you be more embarrassed if your friends called your girlfriend stupid or if they called her fat? And the answer was a vast majority said they would be more embarrassed if their friends called their girlfriend fat. And that's where there's the line, you take stupid over fat. I just thought, how much fuckery is there in the world right now where that is the answer? And I could not get that idea out of my head. And then, a couple other things, the Oscar Wilde. And when I was writing with Mladin at the time, my process was to just write pages and pages of ideas, sometimes with stats, sometimes with whatever things would come in, and try to take that and distill it down to little bits that could be in a song. And that is lyrically where that song came from.
So the lyrics come first with you? Is that always the case in your writing?
Once again, I wish there was a pattern. I know with Elton John, he got the lyrics. He didn't know what the lyrics meant sometimes, but these were the lyrics in front of him. Now he had to make sounds that sounded like the words. And when the sound sounded like the words, he had a great song. I go back and forth, but that relationship between the tones, the mix, the instrumentation, and the lyrics, when they work together, you can have a great lyric and a great melody, but they don't always click, And that's why I think a band like Led Zeppelin is so amazing, because I don't think anyone has ever said that those guys wrote the best lyrics. If you were to you need coolin', baby, I'm not foolin'. I'm gonna take your baby back to schoolin', way down inside woman. If you saw that on a piece of paper, you'd go, no, this is terrible. This is not even poetry. What the hell is this? But it sounds like the music. And you can hear the riff in your head when I just say that. There's some sort of connection between words and music that when it's nailed, the individual things become irrelevant, and the mush of them together makes magic.
Do you find that as you progress through your career, your songs become more personal, or are we learning less about Barlow now than we did at the beginning of your career?
That's a good question.
Thank
I
you.
think when you're, what am I now, 40 whatever years into writing songs, I've become quite bored with myself as subject matter. I think I've mined it to death, and I think I'm not particularly interesting emotionally. I'm just not. I don't have these raging things inside of me, and I'm like, oh, I have to articulate this. So I find that I'm writing a lot more, well, what would it be from that person's perspective? And, more like a filmmaker, I suppose. Francis Ford Coppola is not writing biographies.
Yeah.
He's in his characters and he's in his movies, but it's not, I could not handle being Taylor Swift, where everything is about her. Clearly, there is a market for that, or she wouldn't be the zillionaire she is. But I would just get so tired of it. It's just so unbelievably boring to me to think that I have to be the subject matter of my art.
That's what's nice about art, is it can be all-encompassing across the board. It doesn't have to be one thing in that box that we were talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Well-
and one of the masters of not being in the box is Bob Dylan. And I've listened to every Bob Dylan song ever, from the great ones to the terrible ones. I don't know who the hell that guy is.
Yeah.
You get glimpses. Obviously, the artist is in their art, but this kind of sort of confessional songwriting, and this happened to me today, and my girlfriend left me, and I'm sad about it. And then I went and did this and that and the other. When it's done really well, it can be quite moving because it feels so personal. It feels like you've got a little window into somebody's soul. I get it, but I just think I'm burned out on it.
No.
Well, as the industry evolves and you evolve, and we are in Canada, where do you see yourself in the pantheon of the Canadian music industry? I have some ideas, but I want to hear what you have to say.
It's interesting, because on my way up and into the music industry, there was always, these were the cool kids over here, and these were the mainstream people, and these were the kingmakers, and there was all these identifiable groups. There's not a lot of us left. And I don't mean like they all died. I just mean the music business is so hard and so financially difficult that people fall to the wayside because they have families, because they have responsibilities, because they are no longer inspired for a bunch of reasons. Now in the music business, we all see each other as people who made it. And I don't mean made it massive success. We made it through. We survived it. And so we are now, those of us vintage and beyond, we're just like, hey, here we are. We're still going down and working on our train set. And I find there's sort of much stronger community with fewer silos.
I think that you are one of those people who are one of the Canadian musicians who's just as popular outside of Canada as you are inside of Canada. I see your following, and I'm kind of lurking in the background there, and I see that you've got a lot of international fans. What's been the key to your international success? How did you connect with this global audience?
Well, our biggest international success was Perfect Wave. And that was because, well, I think it's a cool song, but it was on the Shaun White snowboarding video game. And that was
Oh,
5, 7, 10, I don't know how many, millions of copies. And people all around the globe played that video game. And so,
Mm-hmm.
bam, that set me off internationally. The other thing is that because, as we discussed earlier, I'm not in a lane, however, a song comes out, a song comes out. So a song like Cruel World was very sort of dark synth wave. And that idiom is super popular in Eastern Europe. So that song, if you're in Eastern Europe, you think that's my biggest hit because that's my biggest hit in Estonia and in Bulgaria and in Czechoslovakia and worlds that love that idiom,
yeah.
where that idiom is one of the top ones. The new song I just put out, getting very little love in Canada, but a ton of love in Europe, Western Europe, and Latin America.
Yeah.
That's the reggae vibe it's got or whatever it is. So the answer to your question is, the downside of having such a broad palette to draw from is it's difficult to market to an audience because they don't really know what they're getting. The upside is you get all of these sort of people with different musical tastes from different parts of the world.
Well, that your biggest challenge of not being able to, for the companies and people to put you in a box is probably one of your biggest strengths as well, eh? Yeah. So you've overcome it. You've overcome that challenge.
It's worked for me. I have given up on figuring out the algorithm and the branding. And one thing I find really disheartening is, the computer knows that I am in the music business. So it's constantly feeding me stuff to buy. And what it's feeding me is get 1 million plays on Spotify, get
Yeah.
10,000 followers on Instagram, it's constantly bombarding me with how to have these metrics that I can then hold up and go, look how successful I am.
Mhm.
There's the numbers. Not once have I ever seen how to write a better chorus, how to make sure your lyrics are authentic to you but original, how to tell a story, the art. Nobody's selling the art. So the art has become secondary to the numbers game. And once again, if I'm 25 and struggling and I have a new single and I love it, it does not matter to me how good the song is if it's getting the followers and the streams. Followers and streams are first. Everything else is second or third or fourth when it comes to the art.
Yeah, the algorithm is very tough because I find for anyone who's making art and putting it out there, you never know what is going to get picked up, what is going to get amplified. Because you can put your heart and soul into one piece of art and it will get maybe one play. And you could do just something off the cuff and suddenly it's blown up. And you're like, how does this happen? And it sounds like it's similar in
Look,
your musical writing is you'll just
I
create something.
spend an embarrassing number of hours on my music videos because I like cool music videos, because I like filmmaking, and I love the visual art form. It is very common for me with an acoustic guitar singing into a microphone that same song to get far more interaction than this amazing art piece I've made. But once again, I'm the guy in the basement with his train set. I have to be making it for its own sake.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that the word algorithm is now the most used word in the creation of art should be disturbing to everyone, because we've become beholden to ones and zeros and mathematical possibilities. I understand the financial reality of it. I understand that it's a metric that you can show people. I understand it's a dopamine rush and it's an ego boost and all of those things. But it will not comfort you when your heart is broken, that there's no new song to speak to you. I don't care how many hits it has. I don't care how many views it has. Art serves a purpose in our culture. And one of them is to comfort us. And I think algorithms do not comfort. They just can't, and they don't, and it's not why they're there. They exist for another thing. And that we as artists are running around, oh, please, please work in the algorithm. You've got a billionaire's hand in your pocket, like taking from you. And it's a terrible situation. It's a situation we're in, I understand, but it's a terrible situation.
Well, yes, you know what? That's a keen and sobering insight. But, I guess that's the kind of thing that you tell your younger self. But listen, what do you hope people take away from your music when they hear Barlow, or they come to one of your shows? What do you want them to take away?
Well, a couple of things. My experience with how my art affects other people is it's sort of their private journey. I had an English teacher, E.J. Barry, in grade 9, who said to me, the poet writes half the poem, the reader writes half the poem. You don't get to tell them their half. And so I have written songs, and they have affected people in a way that was never my intention. So what do I want people to get from it? Whatever they want to get from it, I guess. Like when Walk Away became, I remember there was a website for people who did self-harms, cutters, we used to call them in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I saw there's a lot of traffic going on from this thing, and I go to this website, and Walk Away is the theme song. As soon as you launch the website, boom, Walk Away. And it doesn't matter that you're covered in scars. You're never in the gutter with your eyes on the stars. I had no idea. I didn't know that was going to resonate with those people. I didn't write it with that intention. I think it's a beautiful thing that they found comfort in that. But, to answer your question, I don't know what people are going to get. I hope they just feel something.
Listen, well, I know me and Xandra always feel something, and we also always feel happiness and joy when we come out to see you. Tell us where we can see you next. What's up next for Tom Barlow and your fabulous band and all of the collaborators that you work with?
Well, the new single is called Supersonic Quadraphonic, and it's super fun. It's one of, we were talking about the relationship between lyrics and music, and I came up with that phrase, supersonic quadraphonic, just because it sounded cool. And then I wanted the music to sound like those words. So that's a new single. It's coming out, I don't know, maybe in a month or two. The most recent single, Not Coming Home, is out now. Stream it.
All right, then.
Figure it out in the algorithm.
Yeah.
And, I've been bitching about the algorithm, and I don't want to be hypocritical, because when and if I occasionally hire a social media person, I'm like, get me the streams. I'm that guy as well. I get to do it live because I have, a lifetime of playing live, and we figured out how to be pretty good at it. And enough people come and see us so we can do it live. Once again, I feel for the young people, because I go and see young singer-songwriters, and sometimes they have really good songs, but they're terrible live because they don't know how to do it. Because sitting in your basement with your guitar, you might get 1 million views on something. Standing in front of people who don't give a fuck about you and are there to drink or for other reasons, and you have to try to figure out how to get them to pay attention to you, is a whole other animal. So these kids are in trouble because on the one hand, they understand the algorithmic world, but the only way to make money is playing live and selling merch. And they haven't got that skill. And of course, we have not a generation, but a cohort of artists who were 17 when COVID happened and were 20 when it was over. And that was their window to go and play in a little cafe and have people ignore you, or to play a small festival and get booed or ignored. They didn't get that opportunity to fail. So now they're 24, 25, and they wonder why no one wants to hire them to play live. And the answer is because you're not very good. I'm not blaming you for not very good. You just never had the opportunity to grow and do it
get
live.
that experience, that really important experience.
Fail.
Do you think Toronto's music venues have bounced back after the pandemic at all? Are you excited? I know you play in Port Credit every Monday night at the Shore Grill and Grotto, but
yes,
how do you feel about Toronto in general? Because I know many, many beautiful live event spaces closed down over the pandemic, and are we looking at a resurgence eventually? Are people enjoying live music again?
I mean, I'm not super knowledgeable on the metrics for that question, but I can tell you in my world, in the clubs I play, there has been a whole bunch of things that have happened. One is people don't drink as much. It's probably
It's
very
true.
healthy and very good. But you know, when we grew up, we would go to a show, have a couple shots before the band went on to get, you know, juiced up, and then have some beers. That was in many ways what funded the live band. That's
100%.
that's what was paying for what was on stage. So now what you have to do is clubs to survive have to have much bigger cover charges.
Mm.
And you have young people who are financially strapped because of the cost of living, because the cost of housing, because of terrible paying jobs and so on. So it is really a struggle. The legacy acts seem to be doing fine. You know, you can go and see Styx and Aerosmith and whoever, and it's going to sell out and everything's going to be okay. But once again, my fear is that there's a handful of bands, the Justin Biebers of the world, who do amazing. But I made a living always being several tiers below that because I could play the
Mhm.
club circuit. And hey, is it better that people are not drinking as much? Yes, it's way healthier and better for you. And alcoholism is such a terrible thing, and it's not good for anyone's health. But it is hurting the live music
Mhm.
industry.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's a lot like how cigarettes had a major effect on the auto racing industry. When they banned cigarette advertising, car racing went in the toilet. And it's only the very top series that survived because cigarettes held up all the feeder series and all the stuff that I was interested in and that we were doing, me and my brothers and that, when we were kids. So, you
Right.
know, that's but like you said, it's, you know, it's better for you not to be advertising cigarettes and have everybody stink like smokes every time they go to the bar to drink too many beers and listen to the band. You have long answers, but my answers are all tie everything in together. That's what we
Right.
do. Listen, man, thanks for this. This has been awesome. It's a, you know, you're a fabulous guest, and anytime you want to come on to talk about anything, we'd be pleased to have you.
Well, thanks for having me on and letting me ramble. But I know it's going to sound so good after the editing.
You know it. It's going to be amazing. And not as good as your band that plays at the Shore Grill every Monday night, which is a tight, excellent band. I suggest everyone go see it.
We've been together a long time. If we were not tight, we would deserve a serious scolding. So thank you
There
for
you
that.
go.
Thanks very
All
much.
right.
Okay, guys. Thanks
Cheers.
for coming. Bye.